We generally talk about technical stuff on the channel, but this week was a lot of stuff going on in tariffs. And while I generally don't recommend considering or worrying about anything that politicians do, the content needs fed, so we thought this was a topic to discuss. So we're going to talk about tariffs in the context of Tangled Filament. We manufacture filament here inside the United States. It costs $10 per kilogram. It is made entirely in the United States. The resin is made in the Midwest, and then it's extruded here inside of our filament lines here inside of Slant 3D. When we started out Tangled, we did it very explicitly to create low-cost filament in competition with primarily Chinese manufactured filament. And we did it as a way to show that US manufacturing could be cost competitive and profitable with externally manufactured stuff, whether it was subsidized or otherwise. At the time, many people kind of misunderstood why filament inside of China was cheaper than US manufactured filament. There's a lot of sort of misinformation around subsidization or labor costs. And really, when you look at what the cost of 3D printer filament is, it is primarily the material and then the labor on top of it. And filament manufacturing, as traditionally done, is very labor intensive. The spooling itself just takes a huge amount of time, as well as the packaging to turn it into a consumer product for you. That labor cost is not necessarily that much lower inside of China, even though people think that it is. The reason US manufacturers are so darn inefficient at making it is because they make so little of it. US manufacturers don't have much scale, therefore they're not able to lower their cost, and that's why you end up with US made filament costing $25 to $35 and internationally manufactured filament costing somewhere between $12 and maybe $20 once it gets to retail. And there's a bunch of other fees in that. I recommend watching one of our old videos about why filament is so expensive to learn more about that. So how does this ultimately relate to tariffs? Well, tariffs should theoretically increase the cost of external filament so that it is more expensive to come into the United States, and therefore domestic manufacturers should be able to keep up. But the issue with that is that externally manufactured filament is still radically less expensive than US-made filament, even if it is imported from China with a 30 to 60 or even 100% import duty. US manufacturing still has filament at $35, so Chinese filament would probably go up to maybe like $25 or $29 if you were buying it on Amazon, even after tariffs were in. So number one, it's not enough. Number two, it's not really even necessary. Now you can have your opinions around the validity of tariffs here or internationally or one way or another, but for me, it really doesn't matter because whether tariffs are present or not has nothing to do with the cost of manufacturing inside the United States. It has to do with manufacturing competence inside of the United States. And frankly, US manufacturers of filament are just really bad at it. They're just very inefficient and don't do simple things like operating for 10 hours rather than operating for 8 in a day, which has startup cycles, go repeatedly every single day rather than running all the way through 24/7 and storing up inventory. They try to operate really lean, but really lean is just really, really inefficient because you have so much waste in the edges rather than just going. And this is probably the primary way that we got Tangled to actually be $10 a kilogram, is the fact that when these machines are turned on, they're turned on and they don't turn off until we're done getting the stuff that we need out of it. We're also just very simple. I would say that effectively, we're just a good manufacturer. We focus on a single thing, we try to do it really well, and then we do a lot of that stuff so that you get competence, efficiency, and scale all working for yourself. So how do I feel about tariffs? Well, in the context of Tangled, I'm giddy as a schoolgirl because the tariffs do increase our competitors' prices. And we were already more affordable than Chinese filament because we were just so efficient at producing it and so focused. But this just makes us more affordable. Now, does that make more people convert over? I don't think so. I think the difference between $13 filament and $10 filament is nothing. So people, when presented with the first one, will buy the first one that they see, and their price sensitivity in that range really is not that high. But that doesn't mean that I'm not okay with the tariffs, because again, any additional friction to a competitor is good for us. So as a US manufacturer, we're like, cool, the tariffs are there. That is a little bit of a help that we have, even though it causes us challenges in other areas. These machines right here are externally manufactured. They weren't made in the US. We did purchase these from a Chinese company, and we would like to purchase more. But there's a problem inside of the tariffs in that they are blanket tariffs. If I was working to improve US manufacturing, what I would do is eliminate tariffs on manufacturing tools and resources. That way factories can be imported But then the raw goods themselves can be tariffed because that way you increase the cost of final sales. So anything produced inside the United States could have competitive advantage in that regard, so long as it's being produced effectively. And I am very much a globalist about this. I think that even without tariffs, I'm okay with competing with the Chinese. Again, we made filament for $10 and we're able to do it effectively and profitably through Tangled by just being good manufacturers. And I think tariffs can sometimes be a lazy way of getting out of that because it allows bad manufacturing to continue to exist when it really needs to be gutted. Because the tariffs don't really increase the validity of factories to get better at their job. It protects them if they're already bad at their job. So it can be a way of looking at government intervention as a way of allowing poor processes to continue to exist. But then there's the other component of, yes, our government is having this interventionist action, but then external governments also have these interventionist actions. There is subsidization for shipping into the United States from other countries, and that is harmful to US manufacturers who do not have that subsidization shipping out to other countries. So you can argue about whether it's tit for tat or not. Again, it comes down to you can't really control what the politicians are doing or what the governments are doing, and nor should you ever try to. It is an external factor that you react to and you do what you have to. So as a business operator, I don't really care about the tariffs. We had already operated competitively with external manufacturers, and this makes us slightly more competitive on a price standpoint, though I don't think from a consumer decision standpoint that's really going to matter, because once something is cheap, a penny cheaper is not that big of a difference from 2 pennies cheaper in the customer's decision-making process. Now, if you want to help out US manufacturing, yes, we're making this video, and this video is effectively an ad for Tangled in the fact that we were already making filament inside of the United States. It was affordable. It's entirely US made. That's all great. I don't really think that's a brand or a stamp to put onto our product. US made or not is irrelevant to the customer. The customer is trying to solve a problem. So the question is, does your filament solve that problem at the price and in the way that the customer is looking for? A lot of US manufacturers don't do that, and they won't do it after tariffs continue to exist. We try to do it as best as we can, and we were operating under that goal even before we got started. So for you as consumers, don't go shopping for US made. It makes no difference before, and it makes no difference now as far as tariffs. US manufacturers have to make themselves competent and good. The tariffs are a short period where you might have a slight advantage to where your higher prices are not as high compared to lower prices. But ultimately, at some point in the future, it will run out because as the world continues to grow, countries and manufacturers have to be able to compete with each other because the world is flattening out to where the salaries over there are the same as salaries over here. It's no longer a cheap labor conversation. It's around expertise and being able to do something. So if you are building a factory, you need to build a factory that's good. And the way you evaluate if a factory is good is really quite simple. All you have to do is say, do customers buy your stuff? Do they like it? And are you getting better over time? A lot of factories get the first 2 ones done, but then they don't focus on getting better over time. They rest on their laurels and they're like, okay, people are buying from us. We're good. We don't need to improve. And that makes them very reactive. If tariffs come or go, that can affect their demand because they were never taking any advantages that they had. For us as a company, we will leverage the tariffs to the degree that we can, and we're not going to prepare for them to always be there. We're going to continue to operate as if that is an external thing that we cannot control. Therefore, it's an external thing that we're not going to focus on at all. If you want some filament, you can buy some black PLA from Tangled today. It's $10 per kilogram, and we have done everything to optimize our factory, optimize the business model, and optimize the marketing in order to have that pricing long before tariffs came around, and it will continue to exist long after tariffs are gone, because we think it's much more about the process of continuing to improve and reduce the costs of materials so that manufacturing can come back from the United States and we can build up expertise and ability to manufacture this raw material here in the States and at a scale and at a price that is usable and competitive with the rest of the world. But we are not going to react at all to the fact that tariffs exist. It's nice to have. It might not be nice to have. But if your business is wholly dependent on them, you need to be working on your business more rather than hoping that some politician or some government or some act of God is going to save you because you are in a fundamentally unstable business at that point. Have a great day, everybody.